horrible congressman. This interview, though, is extremely funny on MSNOW. Let's take a listen.
After winning the special House election in New Jersey on Thursday night, the Democrat Annelelia Mejia proudly referred to herself as Congress's, quote, unbought, unbossed, sassy new member. Her victory wasn't too much of a surprise. She was running to fill the House seat that was vacated by another Democrat, Mikie Sherrill, who is now New Jersey's governor. What was significant was Mejia's margin of victory. The election was a blowout. Mejia won the race by nearly 20 points over her Republican opponent, Joe.
Yeah, but again, this district is very, very blue. This is not surprising at all. What was surprising, what MSNOW actually should comment on, is the election earlier this year in Tennessee, where there was a blowout, there wasn't a blowout, but it was a very close election where it shouldn't have been a close election. That was actually surprising. This election is not.
Hathaway. Now, that is an improvement from the Democrats' performance in the same district in 2024. Kamala Harris won the district by 9 points. Mikie Sherrill was reelected to Congress in 2024 by 15 points in
It's not a big difference.
That district. It also adds to the Democrats' record of special election victories and overperformances ahead of November's midterms. Now, impressive as that is, Mejia's path to Congress was never assured. She credits her campaign's ground game for helping her to stand out in a crowded race, and at one point had as many as 13 candidates vying for the Democratic nomination in February's primary. But Mejia, a progressive activist who's been a vocal critic of Israel, of Israel's government, may have unintentionally benefited from
a vocal critic of Israel. That's how people are campaigning. I mean, it's so crazy. It's disgusting, really. Like, vocal critic of Israel. That's why people are going to elect you on the Democrat Party. It's horrible base.
An unlikely source, AIPAC, the powerful pro-Israel lobbying group. Ahead of the February primary, a super PAC aligned with AIPAC, the United Democracy Project, devoted a lot of time and money on the primary with the goal of building, quote, the largest bipartisan pro-Israel majority in Congress. But Mejia was not its target. Instead, the group focused its attacks on one of Mejia's Democratic opponents, Tom Malinowski, the former two-term congressman who was at the time assumed to be the frontrunner. The twist here is that Malinowski is actually a longtime supporter of Israel and continues to be, but the United Democracy Project didn't think he was pro-Israel enough because he supported putting conditions on military aid to Israel, particularly in the context of the war with Gaza. Ultimately, though, the group's strategy backfired. AIPAC's attack did hurt Malinowski, allowing Mejia to edge past him to win the primary by less than 2 points, which essentially paved the path for her victory this past Thursday.
Look, as someone who supports Israel, I hate AIPAC. I don't like it. I think that the entire concept of giving money to both Democrats and Republicans just because of their stance on a foreign country is ridiculous. I dislike AIPAC in that regard. But the fact of the matter is that AIPAC was not the reason why he lost. If it was, then it wouldn't make sense because he was still the most pro-Israel candidate. What you'll see is that this candidate here that actually ended up getting elected is very, very anti-Israel to an extent that's a little bit ridiculous. And, you know, in general, this conversation about military aid to Israel, as someone who is pro-America and only pro-America, I actually think that giving military aid to Israel is very beneficial, and very simply because giving aid to Israel would mean that we have a leverage point. Right now, we give around $3.8 billion in aid every single year. That's a very, 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 very small amount of money compared to our almost $1 trillion budget in the Defense Department. However, in Israel, that $3.8 billion makes up for about 9% of its defense spending, which is a huge chunk, meaning that Israel is forced to rely on the United States for that aid. Or it could go, you know, what that really means is that Netanyahu, when making a decision, is forced to consult with the United States, is forced to really get United States approval because the United States will always have a 9% of its defense budget spending over its head, over Israel's head. So that's a pretty big thing for a very small cost. The amount of money we give Israel is very little compared to other things that we spend money on, and the reward is huge because we get to basically control Israel, which is a very big benefit to the United States.
Soon, Mejia will be sworn into Congress, a prominent new progressive voice on Capitol Hill, joining the likes of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her former boss, Senator Bernie Sanders. Joining me now is the New Jersey Congresswoman-Elect herself, Annelelia Mejia. What a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
having me on.
So this is actually, we didn't plan it this way, but it makes a lot of sense given the conversation I just had with Ann Applebaum about what happened in Hungary. People who are primarily concerned with what we call kitchen table issues, affordability, rent, things like that. in Hungary started to understand the connection between their sort of autocratic government and the oligarchy and the fact that things were not fair to their own lives.
Yes.
And that's where we stand in America.
Yes.
Most people are concerned about their own issues, but they seem to be making some connection to the larger issues.
Yeah, in fact, on my campaign, I made a point to connect the dots. I would often let people know that, in fact, an authoritarian is just a corrupt politician that has gotten a taste for stealing from the people and wants to stay in power. And an oligarch is just a corporate interest that has gotten a taste from stealing from the people, stealing from their clients, their workers, and they want to keep the grift going. And they share a common enemy, an informed electorate. And so if you have an electorate that's paying attention to the connections between the cost of living going up and the cronies with an authoritarian regime, then you know that you have to not only fight on one front, protect democracy,
What the hell is she talking
but you
about?
also have to fight the stranglehold that corporations are having in our democracy and our economy.
And while you are proudly a progressive, and we can talk about some of your policies, this isn't even a progressive position.
No.
This is basically just a small L liberal position that we would like a fair system.
Pro-democracy, pro-American government, pro-constitution kind of issue. We have, it's our 250th anniversary, right, of the founding of the United States. And here we are defending the idea that we should have a balanced government, that we shouldn't have executive overreach, that we should have transparency in our legislative bodies, that we should have ethics in our judicial.
Congress's, quote, unbossed, sassy new men.
Are defending the idea that we should have a balanced government, that we shouldn't have executive overreach, that we should have transparency in our legislative bodies, that we should have ethics in our judicial body. And
you want to talk about executive overreach? The executive overreach that I am talking about is the disgusting amount of Biden executive overreach that we had, where the Biden executive tried to sequester as much power as possible, even threatening to pack the Supreme Court, trying to ruin a branch of our government. You know, legislative transparency. Did we have legislative transparency under the Biden administration? I don't think so. Did we have legislative transparency when we were sending millions upon millions of dollars in aid to random trans organizations in places like the UK and even Zimbabwe? That wasn't legislative transparency. Did we have legislative transparency when we were spending $360 million in UNRWA funding? UNRWA, the organization, a part of the UN that was caught funding terrorists and consisting of terrorists, employing terrorists in Gaza. That wasn't transparent. And ethical judiciary. I mean, did we have an ethical judiciary under Biden with the political persecutions that we saw in the Department of Justice? Did we have an ethical judiciary when the justices, even now the judges in all around the country, try to make nationwide injunctions out of political reasons rather than reasons for law? Like, what is she saying? The only authoritarian we see here, was really the Biden administration and Democrats as a whole. So once again, stupid Democrat does not know what she's talking about.
Here we have a president who is systematically undermining our Constitution and these protections. You know, my biggest, one of the biggest things that I talked about during the campaign was the fact that we have to abolish and replace ICE. Why? It's not just that they are a rogue police force turning their weapons against the American people. It's the idea that we have in our government right now a president that has a rogue force that could turn itself on democracy, on the people. And it undermines the Constitution, denying immigrants due process, equal protection, and by extension,
district by 9
on democracy, on the people, and it undermines the Constitution, denying immigrants due process.
Is she seriously telling me that immigration enforcement is undermining the Constitution? Like, you know what undermines the Constitution? Coming into this country illegally and trying to claim trying to undermine the sovereignty of this country. That's what undermines this country. Like,
equal protection, and by extension, denying it to every single American. We have to stop it.
So you were associated with Bernie Sanders. He and I talk a lot about universal health care. I'm Canadian. I think there should every other modern big country has universal health care. We're spending, depending on
jealous.
Yeah, right. But we're spending somewhere between $1 and $2 billion on this war in Iraq that no one can plausibly explain what this is. That kind of money.
Infrastructure
Right.
spending.
This is real money.
Yes.
And yet we have to go through this torturous thing with Doge where they're cutting little bits to explain what this is. That kind of money, whether it's SNAP or whether you were associated with Bernie Sanders. He and I talk a lot about universal health care. I'm Canadian. I think there should every other modern big country has universal health care. We're spending, depending on
jealous.
Yeah, right. But we're spending somewhere between $1 and $2 billion on this war in Iraq that no one.
In Iraq? Did he say Iraq? Am I the only person hearing that?
Can plausibly explain what this is. That kind of money, whether it's SNAP or whether it's Medicaid,
whether it's Veterans Affairs, whether it's infrastructure spending.
Every single one of those things she named where the government has basically put in government bureaucracies that are the most inefficient possible are literal organizations that are failing right now because of those. The amount of Medicaid fraud that was just exposed, the amount of, the horrible VA that we have right now, which is basically a communist organization. It's the only socialism we have in this country. That is the most ineffective anti-American thing we have, particularly because of the wait times and the ridiculous lack of, actual available healthcare for our veterans. The VA is terrible.
This is real money.
Yes.
And yet we have to go through this torturous thing with Doge where they're cutting little bits of government here, don't accomplish anything that they're supposed to. But we're literally wasting money on a war that's probably going to end up with Iran more powerful than it was when we started it.
Your previous guest really paints a picture that feels very similar in the United States. We have a government, we have a president whose cronies, whose closest allies are enriching themselves while they dismantle the American government, while they dismantle our safety net programs, while the American people are paying more. The elimination of ACA tax credits drove up health insurance costs by 175%. The elimination of energy tax credits drove up the cost of energy by 6%.
Energy tax credits. She means tax credits for EV vehicles. It did not drive up the cost of energy. It drove up the cost of, this green new scam that we have today in our country. Yeah, it should drive up the cost. You should pay the amount. The government shouldn't be subsidizing your electric car purchase.
The consolidation of starter homes, for example, of housing, rental housing by private equity firms is driving up the cost of housing in 1 year, 5%. This connection between oligarchs and a corrupt administration is costing the American people money, and they're waking up to it.
So obviously every time somebody wins a special election or a primary, they become the closest, the most proximate connection to the voter, as we're 199 days away from the midterm elections. What do you believe works or should work for Democrats? Because 199 days is a lot of days for things to go very right or very wrong.
Yes, for sure. Well, look, I am a progressive, but I believe that the issues that we're talking about are not about left or right. They're about right and wrong. The American people are finding themselves falling behind. My district is a suburban district. My district is very diverse. You have working class, middle class, even affluent people. Every single place I went, I heard the same thing. The cost of living is making it impossible for us to not only hold steady, but to dream about what's going to happen to our children.
Okay, once again, the cost of living, yes, sure, it's not where it should be in our country right now, but if we look at it right now, the quality of life in our country is so good that it's hard to be poor if you don't have a mental illness or some other sort of chronic disease. It is really difficult to be poor in our country. Yes, is the current situation right now not where it should be? Of course, and the American people should be doing better off than they are, but don't try to she's trying to say that, socialism is going to be the answer to the problem with our cost of living when our quality of life right now is really great as a country. It's just terrible analogies that she's using here.
A democracy backslide is very troublesome. It's letting us know that we have a tenuous hold on democracy in this moment, and we have to stand up and fight back. It starts in New Jersey, I think, but I think the midterm elections, if Democrats in particular stay focused on connecting the dots between the rising cost of living and the corruption in our government and the grips that Donald Trump has on the Republican Party, voters are going to make a choice. And I think we're going to not only win the House, but it's going to carry us into 2028.
Thank you for joining us this morning. What a pleasure to meet you. Annelelia Mejia is the representative-elect for New Jersey's 11th district.
Oh my God, guys, this was again one just terrible. Subscribe down below. They'll leave your thoughts on her very interesting stances on these issues. Once again, she didn't really say anything too obnoxious because she doesn't seem like a very intelligent person. But once again, please leave your thoughts down below, subscribe, and like this video. Thank you, guys.